The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble corridors of Valdoria Palace as Princess Elena made her way to the royal library. At 12 years old, she had developed a reputation among the palace staff as the most observant member of the royal family. Her keen eyes missed nothing, a trait that both impressed and occasionally concerned her governess, Lady Margaret. Elena paused outside the ornate double doors of the East Wing study, hearing hushed voices from within. The tone was urgent, almost conspiratorial. She recognized one voice immediately, Queen Regent Cordelia, her stepmother, who had assumed greater responsibilities since King Alexander's mysterious illness 3 months prior. The physician's reports must be altered before the council meeting. Cordelia's voice carried through the heavy oak doors. Prince Wilhelm cannot discover the true nature of His Majesty's condition. Not yet. Elena pressed herself against the cool wall, her heart racing. Prince Wilhelm was her uncle, next in line to the throne after her father, and known throughout the kingdom for his unwavering loyalty and integrity. Why would Cordelia want to hide anything from him? Your Majesty, this deception grows more dangerous each day, replied another voice Elena recognized as Lord Blackwood, Cordelia's closest advisor. The king's condition is deteriorating rapidly, and the truth will emerge eventually. The truth will emerge when I decide it should, Cordelia snapped. Not before. The special tonic I've been administering is working perfectly. Alexander grows weaker while appearing to suffer from natural ailments. No one suspects a thing. Elena's blood ran cold. The special tonic? She had watched Cordelia personally prepare her father's evening medicine each night, insisting that only she could properly measure the delicate herbs. The young princess had thought it was touching devotion. Now she realized it might be something far more sinister. And what of Princess Elena? Lord Blackwood asked. She spends considerable time with her father. Children often notice things. Adults miss. Elena is a child, Cordelia dismissed. She sees what she expects to see. A loving stepmother, caring for her ailing father. Besides, once Alexander is gone and I'm appointed as regent for Elena until she comes of age, the child will need me. I'll be her only protection in this cruel world. Elena bit her lip to suppress a gasp. Her stepmother spoke of her father's death as if it were already decided. Not a possibility to be prevented. The pieces of a horrifying puzzle began forming in her mind. Her father's sudden illness, his gradual weakening despite Cordelia's constant care. And now this conversation about hiding the truth from Prince Wilhelm. The council grows suspicious. Lord Blackwood continued. Lord Chancellor Morrison asked pointed questions about His Majesty's physicians yesterday. He's been requesting independent medical opinions. Morrison is an old fool who doesn't understand the delicate nature of royal medicine, Cordelia replied coldly. But perhaps it's time to accelerate our timeline. If Alexander were to pass within the next fortnight, before the council can organize their meddling, all their questions would become moot. Elena's hands trembled as she realized the full scope of what she was hearing. Her stepmother was slowly poisoning her father and planned to speed up the process. The kingdom would believe their beloved king died of natural causes, leaving Cordelia as regent with unprecedented power. Footsteps approached the door from inside the room. Elena quickly moved away, ducking into an adjacent alcove just as Lord Blackwood emerged. She watched him stride down the corridor, his dark robes billowing behind him like the wings of a predatory bird. When the hallway was clear, Elena hurried toward the servants' quarters. She needed to reach Captain Marcus Thorne, the head of the Royal Sentinel Guard. Marcus had served her father faithfully for 15 years and was one of the few people in the palace Elena trusted completely. He had taught her sword basics in secret, always saying a princess should know how to defend herself and her kingdom. The challenge was reaching Marcus without arousing suspicion. Cordelia had been increasingly controlling Elena's movements, insisting on knowing her whereabouts at all times, for security reasons. Elena would need to be clever. She found Marcus in the armory, inspecting weapons with his subordinates. His weathered face, marked by a scar from defending the kingdom against northern invaders, looked up as she approached. Princess Elena, he bowed respectfully. How may the royal guard serve you today? Elena glanced around at the other guards, then back at Marcus. She needed privacy but couldn't request it directly, without seeming suspicious. Instead, she employed a code they had developed during her sword lessons. Captain Thorne, I was hoping to review the defensive positions around the Rose Garden. I'm writing a report for my studies on palace security. It was their signal that she needed to speak privately about something serious. Marcus's eyes sharpened slightly, recognizing the coded message. "Of course, Your Highness. Guards, continue your duties. I'll personally escort the princess on her educational tour." They walked in silence through several corridors until they reached the Rose Garden, her father's favorite spot in the palace grounds. Elena had chosen this location deliberately. It was where her father used to tell her stories of brave knights and wise princesses who protected their kingdoms through courage and cunning. "What troubles you, princess?" Marcus asked quietly, his hand resting casually on his sword hilt as his eyes scanned the garden for potential eavesdroppers. Elena took a deep breath, knowing that once she spoke these words, there would be no taking them back. "Captain Thorne, I believe Queen Regent Cordelia is poisoning my father." Marcus's expression didn't change, but Elena noticed his grip tighten on his sword. "That's a very serious accusation, Your Highness. What evidence do you have?" Elena recounted everything she had overheard, describing Cordelia's words about the special tonic, the altered physician reports, and the plan to accelerate her father's death. As she spoke, she watched Marcus's face grow increasingly grave. "There have been irregularities I've noticed," Marcus admitted after she finished. "The Queen Regent has restricted access to His Majesty's chambers, even from senior guards who have protected him for years. She's also been meeting frequently with Lord Blackwood in private, often late at night." "What can we do?" Elena asked. "If we accuse her directly without proof, she'll deny everything and might speed up her plans. But if we wait too long, we need evidence," Marcus said firmly, "and we need allies. Prince Wilhelm arrives tomorrow for the monthly council meeting. He's been concerned about his brother's condition and might be willing to listen to our suspicions." Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination coursing through her veins. "I can try to obtain a sample of the tonic Cordelia gives my father. If it's truly poisoned, a loyal physician could analyze it." "Too dangerous," Marcus shook his head. "If she discovers you've interfered with the medicine, she might eliminate you as well. We need a safer approach." They spent the next hour developing a plan. Elena would continue behaving normally while carefully observing Cordelia's activities. Marcus would quietly investigate the palace staff, looking for anyone who might have witnessed suspicious behavior. They would also attempt to document the Queen Regent's meetings with Lord Blackwood. As they prepared to leave the garden, Elena felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. "Captain, what if we're too late? What if she succeeds?" Marcus knelt beside her, his expression serious but reassuring. "Princess, you are your father's daughter. You have his courage and his wisdom. We will not let her succeed. But we must be smart about how we proceed. The kingdom's future depends on it." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her young shoulders. As they walked back toward the palace, she noticed a figure watching them from an upper window. Queen Regent Cordelia, her face hidden in shadow but her presence unmistakably menacing. The game of cat and mouse had begun, with the fate of the kingdom hanging in the balance. Elena knew that the next few days would determine not only her father's life but the future of Valdoria itself. She had uncovered a conspiracy that threatened everything she held dear, and now she had to find the courage to fight back against forces much more powerful than herself. That evening, as Elena sat through another formal dinner, watching Cordelia play the role of concerned stepmother perfectly, she felt like she was living in two worlds simultaneously. On the surface, everything appeared normal, a family dinner, in a peaceful kingdom. Beneath that facade, however, a deadly plot was unfolding, and only Elena and Marcus knew the truth. The princess pushed her food around her plate, her appetite gone as she watched Cordelia inquire sweetly about her father's condition and express hope for his recovery. The woman's performance was flawless, which made her all the more dangerous. As the evening progressed, Elena realized that tomorrow would bring Prince Wilhelm to the palace, and with him, perhaps the first real chance to save her father and expose the conspiracy. But she also knew that Cordelia would be watching for any sign of betrayal, ready to strike against anyone who threatened her plans. The young princess retired to her chambers that night knowing that she was no longer just King Alexander's daughter. She had become the kingdom's last hope for justice, and the weight of that responsibility would either make her stronger or crush her completely. Prince Wilhelm's carriage thundered through the palace gates just after dawn, its arrival marked by the ceremonial horn fanfare that echoed across the courtyard. Elena watched from her chamber window as her uncle emerged from the ornate vehicle, his tall frame and commanding presence immediately recognizable even from a distance. His usually immaculate uniform appeared travel-worn, suggesting he had ridden hard through the night to reach the palace earlier than expected. This change in timing could work to their advantage, Elena realized. Cordelia had been preparing for Wilhelm's afternoon arrival, and might be caught off guard by his early appearance. Elena quickly dressed and made her way toward the throne room, where she knew formal greetings would take place. As she moved through the corridors, she noticed an unusual amount of activity among the palace staff. Servants hurried past carrying fresh linens and flowers, while guards took up positions throughout the main wing. Princess Elena, called Lady Margaret, her governess, appearing suddenly from a side passage. Queen Regent Cordelia requests your presence in the blue drawing room. She wishes to prepare you for Prince Wilhelm's visit. Elena's heart sank, but she maintained her composure. Of course, Lady Margaret, I'll go there immediately. The blue drawing room was Cordelia's favorite space for private conversations, decorated in rich sapphire fabrics and adorned with portraits of previous rulers. Cordelia stood near the tall windows, still wearing her mourning robe, her dark hair only half arranged. The early arrival had clearly disrupted her careful preparations. Elena, dear child, Cordelia said, turning with what appeared to be a warm smile. Prince Wilhelm's unexpected early arrival means we must adjust our plans. I want you to remember that your uncle is under tremendous stress regarding your father's condition. We mustn't burden him with unnecessary worries or childish concerns. The emphasis on childish concerns made Elena's skin crawl. Cordelia was already laying groundwork to dismiss anything Elena might try to tell Wilhelm. I understand, stepmother, Elena replied carefully. I only want what's best for father and the kingdom. Good girl. Cordelia moved closer, placing her hands on Elena's shoulders. You know how much I care for you both. Sometimes adults must make difficult decisions to protect those they love. I trust you remember that. The grip on Elena's shoulders tightened slightly, and Elena recognized the subtle threat. Cordelia was warning her to stay silent, disguising the threat as motherly concern. Before Elena could respond, urgent footsteps approached the drawing room. Captain Marcus appeared in the doorway, bowing respectfully. Your Majesty, Prince Wilhelm requests an immediate private audience with Princess Elena. He wishes to speak with her about her father's condition before meeting with the council. Elena felt a surge of hope. Wilhelm was being proactive, seeking information before Cordelia could influence the narrative. That seems unnecessary, Cordelia replied smoothly. The child needs time to prepare for such an important meeting. Perhaps this afternoon would be more appropriate. With respect, Your Majesty, Marcus stood firm. Prince Wilhelm was quite specific about the timing. He's concerned about His Majesty's deteriorating condition and wants to hear directly from family members who spend the most time with the king. Elena watched the brief power struggle play out between Cordelia and Marcus. Finally, Cordelia relented, but not without a final warning. Very well, but I'll escort Elena to the meeting myself. Family unity is crucial during these difficult times. Marcus led them through the palace corridors toward the green study, where Wilhelm waited. Along the way, Elena noticed Marcus making subtle hand gestures to other guards they passed. She realized he was implementing some kind of security protocol, perhaps ensuring loyal guards were positioned strategically throughout the palace. Prince Wilhelm stood as they entered the study, his weathered face showing deep concern. At 45, he remained a formidable figure, his military background evident in his bearing. His keen blue eyes immediately focused on Elena, with an intensity that suggested he was looking for more than polite conversation. Uncle Wilhelm, Elena curtsied formally, then stepped forward for the traditional family embrace. As Wilhelm hugged her, she felt him slip something small into her palm. A tiny piece of paper. Elena, my dear niece, Wilhelm said warmly, but his eyes remained serious. I've been deeply worried about your father. Tell me, how has he been spending his days recently? Cordelia moved to stand behind Elena, her presence looming like a shadow. The king rests often, as prescribed by his physicians. Elena has been wonderfully supportive, reading to him and keeping his spirits up. I asked Elena. Wilhelm replied firmly, his tone polite but unmistakably commanding. Princess, please tell me in your own words about your father's condition. Elena felt Cordelia's hand settle on her shoulder again, the pressure a clear reminder of their earlier conversation. But looking into her uncle's concerned eyes, she made a crucial decision. Father has been very weak, uncle. She began carefully. He sleeps much more than before, and sometimes seems confused about simple things. The physicians visit regularly. But she paused, choosing her words with extreme care. I've noticed patterns in his condition that concern me. Wilhelm leaned forward slightly. What kind of patterns? Elena, darling, you mustn't trouble your uncle with childish observations, Cordelia interrupted, her voice honey-sweet, but her grip tightening. Let her speak, Wilhelm commanded, his royal authority unmistakable. Elena, continue. Elena took a deep breath, feeling the small piece of paper Wilhelm had given her pressed against her palm. Father seems worst in the evenings, after taking his special medicine, but in the early mornings, before his treatments begin, he sometimes seems almost like his old self. She watched Wilhelm process this information, his expression growing more troubled. She couldn't say more without directly accusing Cordelia, but she hoped her uncle would understand the implications. Has anyone else observed these patterns? Wilhelm asked. The night guards might have noticed, Elena suggested carefully. Captain Marcus oversees their reports. Wilhelm turned to Marcus. I'd like to review those reports immediately after this meeting. Of course, Your Highness, Marcus replied. I have them prepared for your inspection. Cordelia's composure finally cracked slightly. Prince Wilhelm? Surely you don't suspect the dedicated care your brother has been receiving? I've personally overseen every aspect of his treatment. I suspect nothing, Wilhelm replied coolly. I'm simply gathering information to better understand my brother's condition. Surely you understand my concern for the king's welfare? The tension in the room was palpable. Elena could feel Cordelia's anger radiating from behind her, while Wilhelm's suspicion was becoming increasingly obvious. Perhaps we should visit the king together, Wilhelm suggested. I'd like to see him before the council meeting. He's resting now, Cordelia said quickly. The physicians recommended minimal disturbance during his recovery period. I'm sure he'll want to see his brother, Wilhelm countered. Family visits are often beneficial for patients. As they prepared to leave for the king's chambers, Elena managed to unfold the small paper Wilhelm had given her. Written in his neat handwriting were just 3 words. Trust Marcus, careful. The message confirmed what Elena had hoped. Wilhelm was already suspicious and would work with Marcus to uncover the truth, but it also warned her to be extremely careful, suggesting that Wilhelm understood the dangerous situation she was in. They proceeded through the palace toward the royal chambers, passing through corridors lined with portraits of previous monarchs. Elena noticed that Marcus had indeed positioned loyal guards throughout their route, while several of Cordelia's usual associates were notably absent from their typical posts. Outside the king's chambers, Cordelia made one final attempt to control the situation. Perhaps Elena should wait outside while we visit. The sight of his illness has been difficult for her. Elena stays with us, Wilhelm declared firmly. She's his daughter, and has every right to be present. Inside the dimly lit chamber, King Alexander lay propped against silk pillows, his once robust frame now gaunt and pale. But Elena noticed something that gave her hope. Her father's eyes, while tired, seemed more alert than she had seen them in weeks. Alexander, my brother. Wilhelm approached the bed, taking the king's hand. How are you feeling today? King Alexander struggled to focus but managed a weak smile. Wilhelm, good to see you. Been strange dreams lately. Can't seem to think clearly. Tell me about these dreams, brother. Not dreams exactly, the king said slowly. More like fog in my mind, especially after. He gestured weakly toward a small table beside his bed, where various medicine bottles stood in neat rows. Elena watched as Wilhelm examined the medicine bottles, reading the labels carefully. She noticed him discreetly pocket one of the smaller vials, when Cordelia turned to adjust the king's pillows. Father, Elena said softly, moving to the other side of the bed. Do you remember our conversation yesterday about the rose garden? The king looked confused. Rose garden? No, dear one. I haven't been to the garden in weeks? Months? Elena exchanged a meaningful look with Wilhelm. She had never had any conversation with her father about the rose garden. She was testing his memory and Cordelia's potential lies about his condition. You should rest now, Your Majesty, Cordelia interjected smoothly. Too much excitement isn't good for your recovery. As they prepared to leave, Elena noticed her father trying to say something more. She leaned closer to hear his whispered words. Elena, be careful who you trust. Outside the royal chambers, Wilhelm's expression was grim. Captain Thorne, I want those guard reports immediately. Also, arrange for Dr. Harrison to visit me privately this afternoon. The king's personal physician from before his illness. Dr. Harrison is no longer attending His Majesty, Cordelia said quickly. We felt a change in medical care might benefit his recovery. Interesting, Wilhelm replied coldly. Then I'll speak with both the current physicians and Dr. Harrison. Multiple medical opinions are always wise in such serious cases. Elena could see Cordelia's carefully constructed plans beginning to unravel. The Queen Regent's face remained composed, but Elena noticed the slight tremor in her hands and the tightness around her eyes. I should return to my duties, Cordelia announced. The household requires attention, especially with such important guests present. After Cordelia departed, Wilhelm, Elena, and Marcus remained in the corridor outside the king's chambers. Wilhelm waited until he was certain they were alone before speaking. Elena, your observations were very helpful. Marcus, I assume you've noticed irregularities as well? Yes, Your Highness. Princess Elena approached me yesterday with concerns that align with my own observations. We believe immediate action may be necessary. Wilhelm nodded grimly. Then we proceed carefully, but quickly. Elena, you must continue appearing normal while we gather evidence. Can you do that? Yes, uncle, Elena replied, feeling both frightened and determined. But what if Cordelia realizes we suspect her? Then we must be prepared to act even more quickly, Wilhelm said. Marcus, double the guard around both the king and Elena. Use only men whose loyalty is unquestionable. As they separated to avoid suspicion, Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling even more heavily on her shoulders. The conspiracy was now fully exposed to Wilhelm. But that also meant the danger had escalated dramatically. Cordelia would not hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatened her plans, and Elena knew she had just painted a target on herself. That evening, as Elena sat through another tense family dinner, she noticed Cordelia watching her with new intensity. The Queen Regent's questions seemed more pointed, her smiles more forced. The pretense of loving stepmother was beginning to crack under the pressure of Wilhelm's investigation. When Cordelia excused herself early to prepare the king's evening medicine, Elena caught Wilhelm's eye across the table. They both understood that the final confrontation was approaching rapidly. The question was whether they could gather enough evidence to stop Cordelia before she realized how close they were to exposing her deadly scheme. The palace that had always been Elena's safe haven now felt like a battlefield, with allies and enemies hidden behind familiar faces. As she prepared for bed that night, Elena knew that tomorrow might determine whether the kingdom would survive the greatest threat it had ever faced from within its own royal walls. The next morning arrived with an unseasonable chill that seemed to permeate the very stones of Valdoria Palace. Elena awoke before dawn, her sleep having been restless and filled with troubling dreams. Through her chamber windows, she could see Captain Marcus positioning additional guards around the courtyard, their movements deliberate and coordinated. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Princess, came Lady Margaret's voice through the door. Queen Regent Cordelia requests your presence in the library. She wishes to discuss your education schedule. Elena's blood ran cold. The library was in the most isolated wing of the palace, far from the main thoroughfares where help might be nearby. This felt like a trap. I'll be there shortly, Elena called back, while quickly scribbling a note on her personal stationery. She folded the message and slipped it under her door, hoping that Captain Marcus's network of loyal servants would find it and deliver it to him quickly. The note was simple but urgent. Library, dawn, danger. Elena dressed carefully, choosing a gown with deep pockets, where she could conceal the small ceremonial dagger her father had given her on her 10th birthday. It had always been more symbolic than practical, but now she was grateful for its reassuring weight. The journey to the library felt endless, each step echoing in the empty corridors. As she approached the heavy oak doors, Elena noticed that the usual guards were absent from their posts. Her suspicions were confirmed. This was indeed a trap. Inside the library, Cordelia stood near the tall windows, still dressed in her morning robe but with her dark hair arranged in an elaborate style that suggested she had been awake for hours, planning. Lord Blackwood stood beside her, his presence making Elena's skin crawl. "Good morning, dear Elena," Cordelia said, her voice carrying a false sweetness that had become increasingly pronounced. "Please, sit down. We need to have a very important conversation." Elena remained standing near the door, every instinct telling her to run. "What kind of conversation, stepmother?" "The kind where we discuss what happens to little girls who spread malicious rumors about their loving guardians." Cordelia's mask finally dropped completely, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "Did you really think your whispered conversations with Captain Thorne and Prince Wilhelm would go unnoticed?" Lord Blackwood moved to block the door, his hand resting meaningfully on the pommel of his sword. Elena was trapped, but she forced herself to remain calm, remembering her father's lessons about courage under pressure. "I don't know what you mean," Elena replied, though they all knew the pretense was useless. "Please, child, let's not insult each other's intelligence." Cordelia stepped closer, her eyes glittering with malice. "You overheard our conversation 2 days ago, didn't you? You've been feeding information to Wilhelm and that meddlesome captain." Elena lifted her chin defiantly. "If you're asking whether I know you're poisoning my father, then yes. And Prince Wilhelm knows too. Your plan has failed." Cordelia's laugh was chilling. "On the contrary, my dear. My plan is about to reach its perfect conclusion. Your father will have a tragic relapse this morning, complicated by the shocking news of his beloved daughter's unfortunate accident. The grief will be too much for his weakened heart." "Wilhelm will never believe that," Elena said firmly. "Wilhelm will be far too busy dealing with a sudden emergency in the northern provinces." Lord Blackwood spoke for the first time, his voice like grinding stone. "A message arrived this morning requiring his immediate departure. He's already preparing to leave." Elena's heart sank. Without Wilhelm's protection and authority, she and Marcus would be alone against Cordelia's conspiracy. But she wasn't ready to surrender. "Captain Thorne will protect me," she declared. "Captain Thorne is currently investigating a reported break-in at the Royal Treasury." Cordelia smiled coldly. "By the time he realizes it's a false alarm, you'll have had your accident, and your father will be beyond help." Elena realized she had underestimated Cordelia's ruthlessness and planning. The Queen Regent had anticipated their moves and countered them systematically, but Elena was her father's daughter, and King Alexander had not raised a child who surrendered easily. "What kind of accident did you plan for me?" Elena asked, stalling for time while her mind raced through possible escape routes. "A tragic fall from the library's upper gallery." Cordelia gestured toward the ornate balcony that overlooked the main floor. "So unfortunate. Children can be so careless when they're upset about their father's illness." Elena noticed that Lord Blackwood had moved away from the door, assuming she was completely trapped. This was her chance. She pretended to stumble slightly, using the movement to palm the small dagger from her pocket. "Please don't do this," she said, allowing her voice to tremble as if she were breaking down. "I won't tell anyone what I know. I promise." "Oh, my dear child," Cordelia approached with mock sympathy. "It's far too late for promises now." As Cordelia reached for her, Elena struck with the lightning reflexes Marcus had taught her during their sword lessons. The small dagger flashed out, slicing across Cordelia's wrist and causing her to cry out in pain and surprise. Elena didn't wait to see the result. She spun and ran toward the door, but Lord Blackwood was faster than she expected. His large hand caught her shoulder, spinning her around and sending her tumbling across the polished floor. "You little viper," Cordelia snarled, pressing a cloth to her bleeding wrist. That just made this much more satisfying, but Elena's desperate gambit had achieved more than just a momentary escape attempt. The library doors burst open as Captain Marcus charged in, sword drawn, followed by Prince Wilhelm and 3 loyal guards. "Release the princess immediately," Wilhelm commanded, his voice carrying absolute royal authority. Lord Blackwood drew his sword but found himself immediately surrounded. Cordelia, still clutching her wounded wrist, looked around desperately for an escape route that no longer existed. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, attempting to resume her role as innocent stepmother. Elena was upset about her father's condition and became hysterical. "We were trying to calm her. Then explain this." Wilhelm held up a small glass vial containing traces of a dark liquid. "Dr. Harrison analyzed the medicine you've been giving my brother. It contains a rare poison from the Eastern Kingdoms, designed to cause gradual organ failure while mimicking natural illness." Elena felt a surge of relief and admiration. Wilhelm had been more thorough in his investigation than Cordelia had realized. "And explain this," Marcus added, producing several documents from inside his jacket. "We found correspondence between Lord Blackwood and mercenaries in the northern provinces, detailing plans to eliminate Prince Wilhelm if he became too suspicious." Cordelia's composure finally shattered completely. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," she spat. "Alexander is weak, unfit to rule in these challenging times. I would have brought strength and stability to this kingdom. By murdering your way to power?" Wilhelm's voice was filled with disgust. "You would have destroyed everything this kingdom stands for." Elena picked herself up from the floor, her dress torn but her spirit unbroken. "You underestimated everyone, Cordelia. You thought I was just a child who wouldn't notice. You thought Captain Marcus was just a simple soldier. You thought Uncle Wilhelm could be easily deceived. And most importantly," Wilhelm continued, "you underestimated the love and loyalty that holds this kingdom together." Elena showed more courage and wisdom than you ever possessed. Lord Blackwood, realizing the situation was hopeless, attempted one final desperate act. He lunged toward Elena with his sword raised, perhaps hoping to complete their original mission even in defeat. But Captain Marcus was ready. His blade met Blackwood's in a ringing clash of steel, and within moments, the traitor was disarmed and on his knees. "Take them both to the dungeons," Wilhelm ordered. "They'll await trial for treason, attempted murder, and conspiracy against the crown." As the guards led away the conspirators, Cordelia turned back one final time. "This isn't over, child. There are others who believe as I do. Then they'll face the same justice you will," Elena replied with a strength that surprised even herself. "This kingdom protects itself against all enemies, whether they come from outside our borders or from within our own walls." The immediate crisis was over, but Elena knew their work was not complete. They rushed to the royal chambers where King Alexander lay unconscious, his breathing shallow and labored. Dr. Harrison, the trusted physician who had been dismissed months earlier, worked frantically to counteract the poison's effects. "Will he recover?" Elena asked, taking her father's cold hand in hers. "The poison has done significant damage," Dr. Harrison admitted. "But your father is strong, and we caught this before the final stages. With proper care and time, I believe he can make a full recovery." Over the following days, Elena rarely left her father's bedside. She read to him, told him stories, and spoke constantly about everything happening in the kingdom, determined to call him back to consciousness through the power of love and determination. Prince Wilhelm took over the immediate governance of Valdoria, but he made sure to consult Elena on many decisions. Her insights during the crisis had proven that she possessed not just intelligence and courage, but genuine wisdom beyond her years. On the 5th day after the confrontation, King Alexander's eyes finally opened clearly for the first time in months. His voice was weak, but his mind was sharp as he focused on Elena's face. "My daughter," he whispered. "They tell me you saved my life, and the kingdom." "We all did it together, father," Elena replied, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "Captain Marcus, Uncle Wilhelm, Dr. Harrison, and the loyal guards. No one person saved anything. We protected each other." King Alexander smiled, the expression transforming his gaunt features. "That sounds like something a wise ruler would say." In the weeks that followed, as the king gradually regained his strength, the full extent of Cordelia's conspiracy was revealed through investigation and trial. She had been planning the coup for over a year, building a network of corrupt nobles and foreign contacts who believed they could control her once she seized power. Elena testified at the trial, standing before the assembled lords and ladies of the kingdom to recount what she had witnessed and endured. Her testimony was delivered with a composure and clarity that impressed everyone present, nobility and commoners alike. "Your Majesties and noble lords," she concluded her testimony, "this experience has taught me that a kingdom's greatest strength lies not in its armies or its wealth, but in the courage of its people to stand up for what is right, even when it's dangerous to do so." The court found both Cordelia and Lord Blackwood guilty of treason. They were sentenced to life imprisonment in the kingdom's most secure fortress, their titles and properties forfeited to the crown. As autumn arrived at Valdoria Palace, King Alexander had recovered enough to resume his royal duties, though he now relied more heavily on the counsel of Prince Wilhelm and, increasingly, on the insights of Princess Elena. The crisis had forged bonds of trust and respect that would serve the kingdom well for years to come. Elena had changed dramatically through her ordeal. She was still only 12 years old, but she now carried herself with the confidence of someone who had faced real danger and emerged victorious. More importantly, she had learned that true courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to do what was right despite being afraid. Captain Marcus resumed his duties as head of the Royal Sentinel Guard, but he also continued Elena's education in self-defense and strategic thinking. A ruler must be prepared for any threat, he told her during one of their training sessions. But more than that, a ruler must be prepared to inspire others to be their best selves. One evening, as Elena walked through the rose garden with her father, she reflected on everything that had happened. "Father, do you think there will be other threats like Cordelia in the future?" King Alexander considered the question carefully. "Probably, my dear. Power always attracts those who would abuse it, but I'm no longer worried about such threats." "Why not?" "Because I've seen what happens when good people refuse to stay silent in the face of evil. I've seen a 12-year-old princess risk everything to save her father and her kingdom. If our future leaders have even half your courage and wisdom, Valdoria will remain strong for generations to come." Elena smiled, feeling the truth of her father's words settle into her heart. The kingdom was safe not because bad people would never threaten it again, but because good people would always rise to defend it when necessary. As they walked back toward the palace in the gathering twilight, Elena knew that she had learned one of the most important lessons of leadership. True power comes not from forcing others to submit, but from inspiring them to be brave, loyal, and just. It was a lesson that would serve her well in the years to come, as she prepared to one day inherit the throne and protect the kingdom she loved with all her heart. The Royal Sentinel had indeed reacted instantly when Princess Elena breathed her quiet SOS, and together they had proven that no conspiracy, however carefully planned, could overcome the courage of those who stood united in defense of truth and justice.